Hello, everyone. This is Matt, your local friendly gamer. Took a little bit of time, but we are finally going to talk about the Switch 2.
Yes.
And I say we because I have my friend Phil back on for this discussion. I know it's been quite a while. I think it's probably been like 2 years or so the last time that we did one of these things together.
Yeah, I think
so,
so.
so yeah. Last month, the Switch 2 was finally announced after years of speculation, and it was a pretty short teaser. Like it was basically a 1 minute teaser that they just basically showed right out of the blue. And then they say, hey, just we'll show more in early April. That was pretty much it. Which is, an entire, which granted, just looking back after getting, some time to really think about it, isn't necessarily a bad thing. Given that, okay, excuse me,
Oh, God bless you.
given that, it is a direct follow up to the Switch. I admittedly got a little attached to the Super Nintendo Switch name that, all the memes were kind of going along. But you know what? Switch 2 wasn't, a bad decision, especially because, it is what it sounds like. It's the Switch 2, with all of that said, Phil, any immediate thoughts that you have upon the reveal?
So I would say I actually kind of liked the reveal because it gave just enough to really get everyone talking about it without giving too much information sense to where we would overanalyze it before Nintendo was ready. Because if they would have went into, for example, like a lot of spec information or information about, for example, like pricing and things too, we would. I feel like IGN, everyone would have like jumped on all of that stuff and not really just focused on no, the Switch 2 is coming. That's the key story. So I think they did a great job, and they showed enough features to really get everyone um, interested in it. Like they showed the new like little mouse feature, which is pretty cool. They showed the look of the system too, to keep the same look overall, but like nice new features, the quality of life updates. So I think they did a great job within that like 1 minute trailer of really highlighting all the key aspects of the system
Yeah.
as well.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, we live in the era where everyone's going to overanalyze it anyway, just because that's just kind of how the internet is. And with so many people, like, doing, like, their own content creation, own personal news stories and stuff like that, that just comes with the territory nowadays, kind of like what we're doing right now. I have also heard that some of the details have what were leaked prior to the reveal, so that's probably why the initial reveal was as short as it was, and they wanted to use the time between now and the direct to kind of get their ducks in a row and still try to announce everything, the way that they initially wanted to announce it. I mean, the main things that we kind of had going with the Switch 2 teaser was, the overall console and Joy-Con controllers were a bit larger. The way that the controllers attached onto the Switch were different, where instead of sliding in, they do this sort of like magnetic, like attach, detach sort of thing.
Yeah.
With kind of like there's like a connector slot of sorts. There's apparently an additional USB connection on top of the console, as well as the bottom where it connected to the dock. So, that might lead the way for external hard drive use or a solid state drive use or something along those lines. Who knows? I mean, obviously that's what the Direct is for. We do know that it is backwards compatible with both physical and digital Switch releases. I think that's a first, where the digital library will also be backwards compatible. So hopefully, they're just gonna continue right where they left off with the Switch and not have to completely start everything over. Just because the Switch games will already be playable on the Switch too. They did made sure to mention that there will be some games that won't be compatible or will have limited functionality with the Switch, but I have been hearing that that's gonna basically pertain to a lot of games and apps that require like additional accessories, mainly the Nintendo Labo stuff.
Yes.
Would probably have the biggest trouble and won't be compatible. And there are some games that do have Labo functionality that just simply are not going to be a thing. So, like, the game will still work, but you just can't do stuff with Labo. I think the only other game that might have a bit of a tricky contention is Ring Fit Adventure, but I think the easiest way to fix that is just to make a Ring Fit Adventure specifically for the Switch 2. Or at least find a way to make sure that the Ring Fit will work in some regards to the Switch 2, because they did also mention that there's plenty of accessories that you can connect the Joy-Con dock to like via USB. So there's kind of no reason why the classic Joy-Cons can't work with Switch 2. It's just, they just can't connect directly to the console.
Right.
They would have to require an external dock. And they probably wouldn't be able to use like the unique Switch 2 features like you mentioned. Part of the teaser made it look like the second Joy-Cons are going to have kind of a functionality not too different from a computer mouse. So that will be interesting to see how that would work, given the fact that, especially when you're on the go, mouse surfaces can get a little tricky, because, you can't just automatically use a mouse on everything. So it'll be interesting to see how that works. But again, I'll probably say this quite a number of times. That's probably what the upcoming Direct is going to be about. Just to show what all of that is about, if it really is mouse functionality, or something kind of like that. I think the other big thing is that the stand is able to have a wider angle. You can lean it further back. Interestingly enough, we did not get a good look as to if where the Switch 2 would have their micro SD or an SD slot, because with the Switch, that was how you were able to store your games, since you aren't able to connect an external hard drive or solid state drive to the Switch. That was basically how you do it, which was still pretty good, especially because since you take it with you, you have the micro SD card, to store your extra games. And, they have gone up, like up to 1 to 2 terabytes nowadays. So you can still store quite a lot, especially because with Switch games, they thankfully don't take up as much space as, your PS4, PS5, or your Xbox platform games. And it is also...
Yeah.
Yeah. Mainly for like the Nintendo stuff, they don't usually take up a lot of space. Obviously you can't promise third parties.
Nintendo's so great at getting their file sizes down, and like I feel like they have some really good like either compression technology or something to really get the games to fit perfectly on the cards that are produced.
Well, yeah, because the game still looks really good too.
Oh yeah, they look better in a lot of cases than games with huge file sizes, like what was it, 2K and NBA 2K and all those other ones that have the bloated.
Well, yeah, because some companies aren't really good at optimizing their game sizes. I know Activision's also really bad with Call of Duty too, where it's like you need a hard drive just to run the darn game.
I think that's the one, like when you were mentioning about the hard drive as well too, that's one thing that I really like want to see in the next direct, because if, for example, if they say, oh, it doesn't have external hard drive capabilities, for example, that's going to severely limit how many games you could put on the system. Because from some of the games I heard might be like possible release games, if you can't put an external hard drive on it, that 1 terabyte, even if you get like a 1 or 2 terabyte memory card, it's gonna fill up extremely quick with some of those games.
Well, yeah, especially because, in order to keep the price down, Nintendo has been pretty notorious of keeping, like, the actual console size rather low. Because I know, the original Switch only had 32 gigs, and even the OLED only did 64, and it's like, come on, guys, it's like, it's easier to find a phone that has more size.
Exactly.
But it's like, we should be at the point where it's like you should at least have like 256 in the system.
Exactly.
Like, I can understand not having 500 or a terabyte just in the system because that's what the additional storage options are for. But you gotta at least make sure that the base system has enough, especially when you can easily have options to, you could store games on one part, and you could store games on the other. So it's just like, yeah,
because like the Xbox One and the PS4, I think both base models of those last gen systems had, I think it was 220.
It was 500.
It was 500. Yeah,
it was 500.
500 like minimum for those two. So it's like for those, like for the next system for Nintendo, if it doesn't have that much, or like at least, like you mentioned, at least 250 or something, to at least store enough of those larger size games. That's the one thing I'm afraid of with systems. Like if they announce the Switch 2 with like, oh, it has under 100 megabytes worth of storage space, then like.
Yeah, it's if they like start with like 64, because I would imagine that they would at least understand, hey, we can't do like 32 gigabytes anymore, because that's like only gonna have like only like a handful of games. The important thing is that you shouldn't have people expecting to buy a micro SD or external right off the bat, even though as far as like the hardcore gaming audience, that's just what we do. But say, especially since Nintendo's more of a general audience there, where you have like people of all ages playing these games on these platforms, you don't want to have like a parent have to consider a micro SD card on top of a console and games that are already going to be up in price as it is.
And for those parents too, like, now, unless Nintendo's going to do like what they did initially with the Nintendo Switch, where they had their own like they partnered with, I think it was, I forgot which memory card company they partnered with. SanDisk, yes, for their own like official cards. Unless they're going to do that again, I can imagine a lot of parents being confused as to what memory cards, what types, which models, what speeds will actually work with.
Yeah, you don't have to use their proprietary, cards. It's just easier to get, because it's just you automatically don't have to worry about it.
Right, and the speeds are like already set for that one, because like
for the Switch.
Because otherwise, like, you might get a card that it will still technically work for the system, but it might be too slow for certain games, and
or you'll get one that's like faster, but because it wasn't made specifically for the Switch isn't going to take advantage of those speeds.
Exactly.
Which is more likely to happen, because you'll find like plenty of like cards specifically for like cameras and the like, and those were probably made to go at faster speeds, especially when you're doing like 4K footage and stuff like that.
Right. And Matt, I was wondering too, like, so do you think that like Nintendo might lead with the memory, or would they mention that only at the end of the presentation if they include it? Because I'm hoping they'll do it in the beginning. But
they're not. I don't think that's going to be in the beginning. That's going to be what's likely going to happen is they're going to show like the major like functionalities first, Then they'll probably like introduce like a couple of games.
Oh,
And then they'll probably like interject with like, basic console information. And then they'll have some more games featured. I can also see like stuff like memory size of the console being like near the end. Hey, kind of something to mention alongside the price.
do you think they actually would say it or just kind of like show it? Because
They'll just show it.
okay.
Or it'll be like one of those things where like they'll show it, and they'll quickly like have someone say it just while it's on the screen. But it's just something that you're gonna see for like a minute or so.
Mhm.
Like,
a little
it's not
like, pop up, yeah.
Yeah, like a little pop up. And they'll probably also mention like what sort of external storage options too. Unless if they want to make it like, an extra, like, emphasize like an extra bullet point, like, hey, there's 3 ways that you can store games on the Switch. You have like your internal memory, you have the SD card under the stand like last time, and the extra USB on the top is for like a hard drive, especially if you're playing in docked mode or something. I could see it potentially being like that too. Of course, again, we're not going to find out until we actually see the direct. So, but that could also be an option as well.
I'll be so interested to see, I guess, what speed of memory card, like not memory card, what external hard drive speeds they're going to allow. Like, will it be the I forgot what it's called, but it's like the extremely fast version that
That's solid state drive.
solid state. Yeah. Well, I guess I also mean like, so there's the solid state, but there's the like additional speeds that's custom to PlayStation.
You're thinking hard disk drive,
Mhm.
because I know there's hard disk drive, but solid state drive is faster.
Mhm. Oh no, sorry. It's like the it's hard to like describe it. It's like the extra gear that PlayStation can go to, where that's why they could do the quick resume and stuff.
I'm not sure if it's like more of the graphics card or the solid state drive, because
Oh.
the solid state drive is what results in like next to no load times.
Okay. Yeah.
But I haven't really heard much as far as like different speeds for solid state drives yet. Usually when it talks about drive speeds, it's more specifically on hard disk drives, which they don't really talk about that much anymore because of the push to solid state drives. Okay. So and I mean the only really thing that we kind of saw was just a really brief glimpse of what's clearly a new Mario Kart.
Yes.
Because it appears that this one's going to have more racers going on at the same time, and the designs of the characters and the karts look a bit different.
Mhm.
So, and I think the track is also brand new too. So, I think this is actually going to be Mario Kart 9 or whatever they're going to call it. Probably Mario Kart 9, but it's not 8 Deluxe again.
As long as it's not Mario Kart 8-2.
Yeah. Well, I mean that was 8 Deluxe.
No, sorry. I just mean like since it's on the Nintendo Switch too, like Mario 8 /
Oh, yeah.
2.
But yeah, I think this would be something where Mario Kart would be the multiplayer game that gets the new game, and then Smash Brothers would get the expanded deluxe edition. I feel like that would make sense. Now, that's probably not what they're going to end up doing, but I feel like that would make the most sense, especially because with Ultimate, it's very hard to kind of do much past that without completely resetting Smash Brothers.
Right.
Especially because even though he's not getting as old as Shigeru Miyamoto, Eiji Aonuma, and all of the other longtime Nintendo staff, Sakurai is getting up there in years, even though he doesn't look like it at all.
No.
In fact, if you go online and search for pictures of him, he actually looks older when he was 20 as opposed to in his 50s or sick or however old he is now.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's like I feel like a good way to transition into a new leadership for Smash Brothers. Just have a deluxe version of Ultimate be more of the last hurrah for Sakurai specifically. So that he doesn't have to be as hands on. So maybe he can focus on some other projects, before he decides to be, retired or semi-retired or something like that. I know people really want to see a Kid Icarus Uprising remake.
Uh-huh.
But again, it's neither here nor there. But I also feel like that could be something that could easily be announced in the direct or not too long after the system's out. Especially
because that would sell systems right away too.
Well, yeah.
Like,
Mario Kart.
Much.
Mario Kart would too, because I think that was the big reason why that one was also the first one. Because I think the Switch, Mario Kart is actually the highest selling game.
Yes, and isn't it one of Nintendo's highest selling of all time, if not the highest selling? I forgot what.
I'd say one of them. It really depends, because right now I think the Switch is still has less than the DS.
Oh.
The first DS. But it did sell more than Wii. So, it might sell more than PlayStation 2 if Sony just stops changing their figures.
Oh yeah.
I think they went from like 156 million to it's like, oh wait, it's actually 160 million now. It's like, guys,
right.
Settle on a figure. So you're gonna have to let a platform pass it up eventually.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, now I think as far as like actual like power that the console might have, I think people would be down with anywhere between like a PS4 or PS5. Because I feel like that would make the most sense, and especially because as far as like direct competition, even though I think like PlayStation and Xbox are only direct competitors by a technicality. I mean, granted, that's the way that it's kind of been for the longest time, but I think it's especially true nowadays, especially because we have other hybrid platforms now.
Yeah, like the Steam Deck, I think would be technically their biggest competitor.
Yeah, and I know the Asus, the Republic of Gamer brand, they have their Ally.
Yes.
Lenovo has the Legion. And there are some also other ones there that are kind of kind of there, but not really. But those are generally the big ones. I could see Xbox potentially looking into that as well. Especially since, their Xbox Series platforms aren't exactly doing the best right now.
Yeah.
And who knows what PlayStation's going to do.
Well, I heard that with Xbox, because of their new campaign of like anything's an Xbox.
Yeah.
I think that they want to move into that space as well too, but to have it more as like a cloud streaming platform.
Well, yeah, with the Xbox Game Pass and the Xbox App Live, which you can already access on the Asus ROG Ally and I think the Lenovo Legion too, because they're basically running on a Windows OS.
Mm-hmm.
So, they might just, say, hey, we're just going to focus on our gaming app on these high platforms and laptops and desktops that are already out there. What's really the point of making our own platform when we can just take advantage of the platform running off of our OS that we already make?
Right.
Because, I mean, that's technically been the case since, PC gaming really took off back when they were still having the 360. But I mean, it's just, Nintendo and Sony kind of have to rely a little more on their platforms especially for their first party stuff.
Right.
Well, more so Nintendo. Sony doesn't really do a lot of first party stuff on their platforms anymore.
True that they've kind of well, I feel like with Sony they do have their own like pretty strong first price, kind of like Astrobot and things,
Mhm.
but it they don't have they're not launching them with the consistency that they used to.
Yeah.
'Cause there used to be like every year you can expect like maybe a good 4 or 5 maybe
Yeah.
titles that are like PlayStation exclusives that um, really utilize all the hardware in the system that no other system could really match in a sense.
Mhm.
This generation, I mean, other than like Returnal and trying to think of other IPs they built from the ground up.
Well, they've been focusing a lot on time exclusives too,
Mhm.
where it's like, they want they want their they want a certain game to launch on PlayStation first before going to like PC, Xbox, and other places. I think Final
I
Fantasy
hate that
16, yeah.
though. Only because it's not really an exclusive in that case. Then in when they do that, it's really just a um like you mentioned, like a time exclusive, but it's not it's like a false um
Yeah.
exclusive. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah. Like I totally understand like something like starting on PC and then going to consoles later cuz that just makes sense cuz you need PC to you need the PC to make the game, so it makes sense that it's the easiest to put the game on.
right.
But yeah, but it really depends on what like sort of like deal that companies had just so that they could make their game in the first place.
It
I
seems like
mean,
to me it seems like Nintendo's the only company that really when they have an exclusive game, they really stick to it being like exclusive. So I
mhm,
know Xbox, for example, Grounded started off as a Xbox exclusive, and then they made a version for the PlayStation. But I guess on the other side, PlayStation had multiple games where they start off as exclusives for them. I want to say Sekiro was one of them. I could be wrong with that, but I thought um, Sekiro was originally PlayStation owned, like
mhm,
exclusive, and then moved over to Xbox. But
yeah,
for example, like Smash Bros, you'll never see on another system.
yeah,
Mario never go into another system, and it's like the benefit for Nintendo is that you know that going in, like, oh, if I want to play Donkey Kong Country, I'm not going to buy Xbox. I'm definitely going to buy like a Nintendo system because I know they're the only ones that are going to have this game.
yeah. And I mean, they were on mobile for a bit, but I think especially with Mario Kart Tour kind of flopping, they kind of stepped away from it a bit.
Right.
Because I think the only one that they're really focusing on now is the Fire Emblem one, because that's still really popular. Fire
Oh
Emblem
yeah.
Heroes.
Mhm.
But I think the only other one that's getting regular support is, well, basically the Pokemon games. But Pokemon has always been their own thing too. That's not like really the only stuff like as far as like Pokemon's concerned with Nintendo is just the stuff that they bring specifically to the Switch consoles.
Right.
Because Pokemon can always do stuff for like Switch and mobile, and even like browser based stuff too.
Mhm.
Because I think that's Pokemon was doing a lot of browser based stuff for the longest time.
Because I think isn't
Before
that Pokemon Unite? Was that the one that was browser based also?
no. I'm talking like way back in the day before
Oh.
phone games were a thing.
Oh.
But no. Unite is mobile and Switch.
Mobile. Oh.
Yeah, and the upcoming Pokemon Champions is going to be Switch and mobile as well. So yeah. Yeah, let's also try to kind of see kind of how they might start off with the games this time, especially with the Switch being backwards compatible. There's already likely going to be some cross-gen releases. Like Metroid Prime 4 is probably the easiest one. Pokemon Legends ZA would probably be another one that's a cross-gen release as well. And then it would be interesting to see how they'll handle like the upcoming library for launch, because I could see like where they do like a mix of games that are Switch 2 exclusive, but then have games that are like Switch 1 and 2.
Mhm.
Like, for any, like, remasters or ports of games, I could see that being Switch 1 and 2. Um, you know, certain updates to the Nintendo Switch Online library of games could be Switch 1 and 2. Really, the main games that will probably be only Switch 2 are games specifically designed with the Switch 2 in mind, especially if the Joy-Con feature actually has like a mouse-like feature to it. So, brand new Mario game, brand new Zelda game, brand new Splatoon, maybe a new IP or something like that. Yeah, I could just see those only being Switch 2.
And speaking of with the new Joy-Con, for example, I think that's going to open up a door for Nintendo to make their own what's it called, RTS games, because they've kind of strayed away from that. But now they could really get. I think the only game I can remember on the Switch that was really a strategy game was, I think, Civilization 7. I might be mixing up the numbers for that.
I think they did have Civilization 6.
Six might have been the one I was thinking. Yeah. So Civilization 6 was the last, like the only strategy I could really remember that.
And that was a relatively new thing too.
Mhm.
Like that was not on a Nintendo platform before, so that was quite a big announcement on its own.
So I wonder if, now I don't know how successful it was, because I have seen like that game, on sale a lot too. So I don't know if it's on sale because it sold a lot of units and still had some more to move, or if it needed to go on sale to actually generate, for people to buy it. But I think that does allow for other games to kind of move over to the new system, especially with the updated graphics.
Yeah, I definitely we could see maybe some more shooter games being on there.
Mhm.
A good chance of maybe more MMOs being on there.
Mhm.
Let's see. What
Especially the free to play ones too.
Yeah.
I feel like it could be the home of like everyone that used to play those on PC, for example. Now we get a Switch to be able to play that on.
Well, yeah, because I know there's already Sky, and I know there's Children of Light, and I think and Palia was the other one that I think are already on the Switch. So that might open the door for more games of that nature. Because, it'll be interesting to see, like, how, say, like, a Mario Party would take advantage of that.
Oh. Yeah, that could be a really good thing. I think Mario Party and what was the with the very next, like you mentioned before, like the next Mario game, like specifically, or even WarioWare. I feel like those three would be like the main.
Yeah, WarioWare usually likes to take advantage of the specific console gimmick. For each platform. So yeah, I could totally see a WarioWare, but WarioWare usually comes like after like about a year or two after a platform has been out, maybe even longer, because that's just something that you just have like quick little mini games going on. So it isn't exact. They'll probably do a Mario Party first.
Yeah, because I feel like, especially with with that functionality, they like. I know this generation, I believe we had. Did we only have 2 Mario Parties for the Switch?
We had 3.
3. So we had Superstars. We had
no. We had Super Mario Party. Then we had Mario Party Superstars, and then we had Super Mario Party Jamboree. Those are the 3.
I forgot the Jamboree one.
Jamboree was more recent. Came out last year.
Mm-hmm. So so like you mentioned, that in that case too, then they are, well, it might not be by launch though in this case then, because unless they do a Jamboree 2 that has like some additional mini games, specifically for the new system, I don't know.
I know it's too soon. Yeah, I think they'll definitely do a new Mario Kart. And kind of rely, the multiplayer interaction on that. Hopefully they decided to stop with the whole 1-2 Switch deal, because the 2 times that they did that did not work out very well.
Matt, you know what though? I think they have to do it one more time. I think they need one more 1-2 switch.
Well, if they do it, it better be a free game with the console instead of paying
That would
for
be
it.
cool.
Because that really what should have been what the first one was. It should have just been a free game that came with the console.
Hmm. I think the benefit for that like the functionality of 1-2 switch is that it did take advantage of like every single piece of the Nintendo Switch kit, even like things that other games don't really utilize.
Yeah, but it only like lasted for like 30. You get like the most out of it for like a half hour and then you're done.
Right.
like
Oh,
with
yeah.
Wii, at least with Wii Sports and even I think Nintendo Land, there was more to do with the game. And in fact, Wii Sports, you could just play the game outright. I'm surprised Nintendo Switch Sports wasn't the pack-in game. Honestly, I'm surprised how long it took for that game to be a thing.
Right. Because I feel like that was a decision where they said like, wow, Wii Sports sold a lot, even though it was like packaged in with the system.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, we really like people love that game. I wonder if we could charge for it now. And so like they took away like because the big benefit for that game that like everyone loved is not only was it one of the most fun Wii games, ever pretty much, but it was also bundled in with the system too, so everyone had it, so you always had someone to either play against, play with, who knew about it. When they
they eventually released like Wii Sports Resort for you to purchase later, but everyone got it because they loved the original to begin with.
Mm-hmm. But I guess like the downside with the new one is with the new one for this system is that because the player base wasn't as big, we didn't know who else had it to be able to know who we could play against. Because
it came off of the Wii U, and
right.
The Wii U didn't exactly sold well at all. So they probably want to make sure that, hey, we want to make sure we actually have people buying our system first. But if they still took a really long time to get Nintendo Switch Sports out, though, because at that point it's like they knew like within the first couple of years that people were actually buying their system.
Right.
So it's like you could have released it easily within the first year or so.
And the craziest part to me about Wii Sports Wii Sports. Well, actually, yeah, Wii Sports for the Switch Sports one.
Yeah.
It was that it wasn't even finished when they released it. Because I don't know if you remember, but they kept adding sports to it.
I've only heard that they've done that once. Have they added more since then?
Mm-hmm. So I remember, I think I might be mixing up the exact ones, but no, I think they added basketball, volleyball, and something else. But they were like,
I thought basketball and volleyball were already in it.
Was it so maybe it wasn't those.
I think golf was the one that was added in.
Golf,
but I think that was the only one.
I thought they added. I thought it was like 2 or 3.
No, I think they only added one afterwards. Oh, excuse me.
Because I think I remember 2 being added. Because I was like, oh wow, there's still, or maybe it was 2 different updates. Then.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, one thing, especially with some of the multiplayer games that Nintendo was releasing, they kind of got into a really bad habit of like, here, we're only just going to release what we have ready now, and then we'll provide the rest of it in free updates later. Because that was a thing that, kind of screwed up with the Mario sports games. Mm-hmm. And granted, that was just a thing that has always happened with Splatoon, where you get your basic campaign and your basic, your basic maps and your basic weapons, and then we're just going to release a bunch of updates later. And especially for whatever reason, it's like, for 2 and 3 especially, it just kind of felt like a huge reset. Because, a lot of the weapons that came out were just, the weapons that were in past games with the occasional new weapon. Or the weapons that involved a new weapon type for that game. So I'm hoping that they kind of ease up on that. It's like, hey, actually have the game ready first, so that you don't have to update it as much.
Right.
Or if you're gonna update it, at least make the updates feel like they're brand new stuff instead of just re-adding like stuff that's already there. Or with the Mario sports games, you're adding in characters that people would have expected to be in the base game.
I wonder if they do that to keep player engagement going. Because, like, for example, if there's a in the Nintendo sports game, if they add in, for example, who would be a huge person?
Well, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with player engagement, but you got to make sure you get enough people interested to begin with.
Right.
If you don't get enough people interested to begin with, there's not enough players to keep engagement going on to start with. Mm-hmm. And by the time you get to all your updates, the game already dropped off, mm-hmm. and people are playing something else or going back to what they've already been playing.
Right, because I remember with so this game's coming up, so it's not like and it's not a Nintendo game, but just as an example, with I think it's Fatal Fury: Mark of the Wolves or something like that. The new fighting.
It's City of the Wolves.
City of the Wolves, yes. When they announced the game and all the characters, and then they said that the upcoming DLC, and they announced like season 1 already, including Terry, Mai, I forgot the other two.
That's just something that fighting games like to do in general, because Street Fighter does that, Tekken does that, and they did that for Smash Brothers too when they announced the Fighters Class. Like, they didn't exactly reveal it, but they just show, hey, this is how many we have, and this is like the estimated date of when we'll have it ready. Mm-hmm. That is a pretty good way of keeping engagement. It's like, hey, we got these. Or even just like expansion passes for various games, RPGs, or just, or even just, and some platformers have done this too, where it's like, hey, here's our general release plan, and here's like, our time frame for when we're going to have these ready. So it's basically letting people have the roadmap ahead of time. And that generally works out pretty well. And it's something that I think hopefully Nintendo, specifically with their multiplayer releases, like, their sports games in Splatoon and the like, because they actually did a really good job with that with, the booster pass. With the booster pass, it's like, hey, we have a time frame to release this many courses, and that's how we're gonna go about our booster pass. And they even like, added some surprises of additional characters as they were making their booster pass announcements too, as a nice little surprise.
Yep.
So yeah, that also is a good example of them, keeping up the release schedule. So it's like more of that and less of what they're doing with, the Splatoon and the sports games. And sometimes they even just, they either do like next to no updates at all of some of their games, or they just do everything in like one big update. Right. Because I know Mario Odyssey had like next to nothing, but then again, it was a pretty big game. It kind of didn't really need much more. And I know Animal Crossing New Horizons, they only had like the one update. Mm-hmm. And then it's
the
just like
island, the extra island.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of like it was kind of like an extension of the Happy Home Designer, just with New Horizon.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was just basically that was their big update, and they haven't really done anything much since then, despite how well the game started off at first. But that was also because the timing of the game also worked in their benefit too, where people had to stay home.
That they were literally designing the homes that they had made.
Yeah. Or remember, they're in their own they're at their own like vacation island when they have to stay at home.
Yeah, because I do remember during that time, like, a lot of people were having weddings like in the app because they couldn't actually have their weddings in person. Um,
Yeah.
so that it was like perfect timing, honestly, for that game.
Yeah, but then it kind of fell off as things were getting better because there wasn't much. They once you did everything with your island, there wasn't really much to do outside of it, unfortunately.
And once some of the unique social things fell off, then it's like then you didn't have as much reason to go back in. Because
Yeah.
I know with um during COVID, actually, for Animal Crossing, they had a couple museums that's like, oh, people are coming to our actual museum, so we're going to recreate the museum in Animal Crossing, and then have people come through their island, giving out the code, and all of that pretty much stopped once the museums actually opened back up. They had
Yeah.
virtual tours.
Yeah. So yeah.
I do have a quick question for you, Matt, related
Yeah.
to um the Switch's. I guess it's kind of a two-part question because it's with the Switch's new enhanced graphics. It is going to change the look of some of our favorite characters because they're going to be actually utilizing the increased power. I don't know if you saw like the mini controversy about Donkey Kong's design in Mario Kart.
That wasn't so much due to the Switch 2. It's more due to kind of mimicking his design from the movie.
Uh-huh.
So they're going off of the success of the movie to do a little bit of a change to Donkey Kong's design. And it wasn't even so much a controversy. It's just people notice, oh, hey, he looks kind of different.
Right. But I guess I wondered too, like because of the enhanced graphics of, for example, shown there. Do you think that there will be a lot of changes in some of our favorite games?
Are you talking about like how some of
like
our past games are going to get like a cross-gen upgrade, kind of like what some PS4 games have?
Well, I guess I mean more of like will the next version of some of our favorite games have drastic changes that might, because they're so Nintendo was great at like utilizing to the maximum ability its the hardware that was available for it. In terms of like designing characters that were still bright enough on the screen, but also had enough details that the Nintendo Switch can handle. But with the boost to the newer systems that might be like PS5, Xbox, series graphics, do you think that might
I don't think that's gonna have a direct change on like a design philosophy. I think that's just always going to be Nintendo's thing. I mean, the update in hardware will certainly give them a lot room to work with. But we've kind of already seen changes in like overall character design, like in Super Mario Wonder. They were looking very distinctly different there. As kind of the new overall, artistic direction that they're taking. So, really, it's just a matter of what they're gonna do for that specific game. Because usually when it comes to what they want to showcase in the game specifically, it's just how kind of the unique controls that the new Joy-Cons would have and how it would affect the overall game. When it comes to just pure graphical power, Nintendo is the kind of company that tries to work well within their means. They usually don't push things to the limit, at least right away. They usually like save that sort of thing for like their later games. Or if there's any games that tends to push the platform to the limit, that's usually done via like one of their associate studios, like say Intelligent Systems, Monolith Soft, or or Next Level Games. That would be more up their alley as opposed to Nintendo, their specific division. Like that's not something that what we're gonna see early on is stuff to specifically get a Switch 2. as opposed to just sticking with the Switch that everyone already has. That's going to be the main thing, especially early on, is that they're going to try to focus on the unique elements with the Switch 2. And then as we get later on into the console's lifespan, then it's like they're going to find what worked, what doesn't work. And then they're going to take like their direction in games regardless of what franchise it is from there. As well as, other developers, both second and third party. So it'll definitely be like the first year or so will definitely be the most experimental part. And then later on, we're going to see kind of like, kind of smoothing things out between what everyone's already used to versus what you would need to get the Switch 2 specifically for. This was the sort of thing that kind of put the Wii U in trouble because the Wii U was such an out there concept and no one really knew exactly what to do with it. So a lot of the stuff that made the Wii U unique kind of got dropped rather quickly in favor of stuff that unfortunately could have easily been done without the gamepad. So, and I think that's the situation that they're trying to avoid here, which they were also trying to avoid with the Switch as well. So, but that's the whole point of, this next system being the Switch 2 is that, hey, we're just going to take what we already works for us for the Switch and hopefully make it better enough for people to move from the Switch to the Switch 2.
And I was wondering too, like when you mentioned that too, Matt, I wonder if, or I guess, are you hoping that the Switch 2 has a couple additional features that maybe we haven't seen yet that might, like a couple other, like for example, like mouse. Do you think that it might have some other cool little aspects to it that might not have been mentioned before? Because when you were mentioning about the difference between the Wii U and the Switch, and there was always like something like a good hook for different systems, even if it didn't work, there was always an additional hook.
Yeah.
The only thing I'm noticing from the Switch 2 is that there isn't that specific hook from other than graphics from the Switch.
Yeah, other than graphical power and the fact that the Joy-Cons might slide along like the mouse. Yeah, there isn't really much. But there doesn't really need to be, because, and this kind of goes into a point that I kind of want to make as well. I think even for it to be successful, it doesn't even need to sell more than the Switch. Because as we look kind of in the past from, the initial console to like its immediate successor, NES to SNES, the Game Boys to Game Boy Advance and the DS to the 3DS, the platform that always came right after it always sold less. Maybe not that much less, but less regardless. Like I think, the original Super Nintendo did like in the 60 millions, and I think the Super Nintendo, even though everyone finds that a lot more fondly, was like in the 40 millions. And then, the N64 was in the 30 millions, and then the GameCube was in the 20 millions. And then the Wii is when everything shot right up. So it could still be a successful platform, even if it doesn't break 100 million. Of course, the gaming journalists and all the social media people aren't going to see it that way. But I feel like as long as it does more than half, it should be fine. Especially because with the backward compatibility, you're not going to have people jumping on from Switch 1 to Switch 2 right away. Especially because, especially with the hybrid platform, it's not a unique market anymore. There are other companies that are doing it now. So it kind of makes sense that, things will start off a little bit slow, unless if there's like that really killer game that people have to get the Switch 2 for. But I feel like it still would be the best to have a mix of Switch 2 exclusive and cross-gen releases, at least for the first couple of years, maybe 3 or 4. Like I feel like after year 5, you can get away with just having Switch 2 only. Like I'm honestly surprised that PlayStation is still doing a mix of PlayStation 4 and 5 releases.
True.
But I think that's largely because there aren't as many people getting a PS5 as Sony would have liked.
True.
So there's plenty of there are plenty of so even though there's plenty of Sony like major hitters that are only doing PS5, there's a lot of the like, you know, smaller games or the games that are like either ports or remakes that are still doing like the cross-gen 4 to 5 sort of deal, which is good, because I certainly been taking advantage of that since, I can't get a PS5 right away.
And I guess like the thing with like you mentioned too, like, is there really a reason to upgrade? Like, because I have the 5, but
Mhm.
also like you mentioned too, like by having the 4, you still have access to so many of the other of the games. You might not, for example, be able to get Returnal, but you can still get the main core games. And it's like, do you still like, is Returnal, for example, worth
$600 console? Not really.
Right, that's what I mean. Yeah, like is it worth the upgrade to a new console just to play Returnal?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the thing that I'm missing the most is Final Fantasy 16 and Tekken 8. Well, and Astrobot. Those are like the 3 that I'm missing the most. But yeah, it's like, especially if I want to get like the disk drive for backwards compatibility, is it worth spending that much money just to get those 3 games when the most I'm going to play, on PlayStation for the time being are the games that I already have or the games that I can already get.
Right.
And I feel like that's a similar question to Switch 2. It's just, how many games need to be released before I get it? If I get it at all, Because, again, it's like, it really depends on how many. But at the same time, you don't want to release too many Switch 2 exclusive games right away for people to miss out. Because even though FOMO is a thing, that could be a double-edged sword, especially because, especially with the infamous Joy-Con drift, if there's any point like early on where there's like a point of failure of the Switch 2, you don't want too many people buying those only for it to not work the way that it should. And I think people are already a little bit concerned with how the Switch connects to the console, because they feel like the magnet thing looks like it might break off too easy, which I'm hoping is not the case.
Oh, yeah.
Because here's the thing, at least with Joy-Con drift, you can replace the controllers, even though they're $80, but you can still replace the controllers. If the connector thing breaks off, you're replacing the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And that is infinitely worse. That is infinitely worse, because replacing the actual console unit or repairing it would be such a hassle. Mm-hmm. So it is something that I really hope they get right. I mean, obviously, this should not be the second console that has drifting sticks, mm-hmm. Or at least, have the sticks last for like, 8 to 10 years before they start drifting, because that's just with any console, Any controller can have the risk of drift, after a while. But after a while is the key part. But yeah, you definitely don't want the point where the controllers connect to be an issue.
And when you're mentioning that too, Matt, I was wondering. So I know, like, sliding the Joy-Cons in, if you ever slide them the wrong direction, they kind of get locked up a little bit, mostly in the grips, but I have had it, like, on the system, too, like, mm-hmm. If, kids or anyone's trying to dock it and they dock it wrong, they could get locked up. But I wonder if Nintendo was solving for a problem that didn't fully exist with the magnetic Joy-Cons, because I know, like I mentioned, docking them can kind of, I have had it where, like, on that little,
or they kind of misalign a little bit.
Yeah, like they kind of like, you put it.
Yeah, I felt like they could have. I felt like they could have just kept it to where they just slid in, and just with bigger Joy-Cons, and it would have just been fine. But who knows? I mean, maybe it will work just fine, but I do really hope so because I think that's the part that I'm worried the most. Aside from Joy-Con drift still being a thing with the new ones, which they shouldn't, but I'm hoping that was the first thing they fixed. But I hope they didn't trade one problem for another there. But
Mhm.
that's something that we won't know until the system's already out and people are already buying it. So hopefully they've covered their bases there.
And
The
if
other
not,
place,
hopefully they at least have a really easy fix. Because
yeah,
the reason why I mentioned that too is because with Joy-Con drift over time, people like so I fixed my sister's Joy-Cons. The way that I did it was I had to buy the replacement sticks
yeah,
and actually like open up the Joy-Con and carefully because it's kind of
yeah.
you know
But you also got to
maybe
understand that not everyone's gonna either have the time or the know-how to do all
true.
that.
And I guess but I guess like from a repair perspective, that's why I hope that the new Joy Cons, like at least how they connect, if it does break at that point that you mentioned, I
Mhm,
hope that they already are thinking about like how would someone fix this, because if it's, for example, if that connector goes to the board itself
mhm.
and breaks, then you have to replace the entire board to fix that.
I
Depending on how
don't
the
think
power.
that. I think it'll probably be attached to the casing.
I
That's
hope so.
probably
Yeah.
what it'll be.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and it'll be separate from it. So, but yeah, that I think that was like the initial point of concern. Other than the fact that the trailer didn't show much, but at the same time there were like supposed leaks going around, so of course it wouldn't be able to show much. And they already were quick to mention, hey, we're gonna have a direct coming up in a couple of months that's gonna explain a lot more.
Right.
You know, and it seems like it will be a fall or winter release date for this one, since the announcement was early this year and the direct is going to be leaning towards the middle of the year, so they probably want time in between to like have everything kind of settle in before people are starting to ready to buy and all that. But and we probably won't get a whole lot in the way of Nintendo Directs either, because they probably want to specifically focus for the Switch 2. Like I think it might be specifically Switch 2 related stuff if any announcements, like
Mhm.
what's coming up next month.
'Cause I feel like so that actually like had me thinking too, Matt. I wonder if they're going to do the only hardware for the Switch 2 release for the next direct, and then or maybe like announce maybe like a couple games, and then
Yeah.
have an entire partner direct like following it, where they go through all the third party
Yeah.
um, games that either already exist but are coming to Switch 2,
Mhm.
or brand new games from developers that we know that are being developed for Switch 2, but all third party related.
I mean, it could really be either or at that point. But yeah, it's a very wait and see sort of thing. Just kind of like everything else regarding the Switch 2.
Oh,
Let's
Matt,
see.
do you have predictions for third parties, by the way? Because I heard of at least one that is kind of a
I mean,
one, but
okay.
two actually, two third parties I heard.
Okay, I think we could see Sakurai's new game.
Uh-huh.
Well, I mean, I haven't heard of any sort of new game that he's thinking of making, unless if he mentioned it during his YouTube series. But that it could be a possibility. I mean, Sakurai is technically first or second party. As far as third party stuff, I think half of it is gonna be like, okay, he mentioned that he started working on one a few years ago. Okay, that's fair. But let's see. I'm trying to think as far as third party specifically. I think it's gonna be more focused on games that probably could previously be on the Switch, making their way to the Switch 2. There might be one or two cross-platform stuff that's like, hey, we're developing it for the PS5 and Xbox Series consoles, and now that the Switch 2 is formally announced, we can announce that we're also doing for the Switch 2 as well. So maybe we'll have at least one of those. But I think as far as third party stuff, if it's not already, if it's not already in the Switch, if it's not already on the Switch, it'll probably be like, hey, this game that has already been out for these platforms can now make its way to the Switch too because it's a more powerful system. I think we're gonna see more. I think we're gonna see more of those. Now,
so I've heard of two games to keep an eye out. I'm not even my fingers right on the
yeah.
I heard of two interesting games that are being like rumored to be coming to the Nintendo Switch because of Nintendo Switch 2 because of the increased hardware.
Okay.
One would be Star Wars Jedi Survivor.
I can see that because there is already a Jedi game on the Switch.
Mm-hmm.
So having the next one be on Switch 2 makes sense.
And it just needs that little bit of extra power, from what I've heard, to make it
work.
To make it work on the Switch 2. The other one that's a little bit interesting to me, I guess because I'm a sports fan in a sense too, but one is also Madden. And the reason why Madden is kind of interesting is because from what I've heard, because of, I guess, how they're the background stuff into the game, the reason it's finally
they may do Fallen Order first because that isn't on Switch 1. That could also be true as well. Or they might find a way to announce them both.
A dual pack would be great.
Or say, hey, this one's coming first, but then we're going to be working on the other one for Switch 2 later.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of deal. Because, there have been quite a few announcements where it's like, hey, this game's coming soon, but then down the road, this other game is coming.
But I think we're going to see a lot of games similar to Madden, where like games that when developers were saying that they couldn't port over Game X because the Nintendo Switch didn't have enough power, as soon as the Switch 2 comes out, all of those game like companies that have been wanting to launch games onto a portable system but didn't think it had the hardware power are all going to jump to the new system.
Well, yeah, hopefully we'll see a lot less cloud versions.
Yes, Oh, that's what I guess. Sorry, that's what I meant. Like more natively played.
Yeah, well, more versions where you can actually download the game.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the only other thing to talk about is kind of how online's going to be handled, because I think they're going to continue. I think they're going to continue on with the current Switch Online. I do hope that the servers would obviously be better. They should be better at this point because, midway through they did a upgrade to their servers from the ones that they've been using since the 2000s. It's like, what the heck? And it's like I think we're overdue for another updated online service. Hopefully with NSO, nothing is restarted. Everything that is already on the Switch should be on the Switch too. Hopefully less drip beady nonsense. Now, as far as potential new retro platforms to be on the Switch 2, do you think we might finally see GameCube being on the Switch 2? Or DS or 3DS, maybe Wii games? Or do you think that GameCube and Wii games are better off as ports or remasters or remakes, and then maybe keep maybe just have DS and 3DS games be the games that are on NSO?
I almost feel like they would have to move something over in terms of the GameCube games over at least, because how can I explain
the memory card?
Well, because you could play some of them not legally, but I know for example the Super Smash Bros. Melee, people were able to play online for a long time.
Well, yeah, but you had to emulate it, and of course Nintendo cracked down as quickly as they could as far as doing that for tournaments, which discouraged a lot of people. So yeah, it would be nice to have a Super Smash Bros. Melee that you can play on NSO and have actual online connectivity, because they have shown that there can be online connection done through older games through NSO. It would be nice to see them fix the N64 one up a bit, because that's a little janky, unfortunately. Or, well, with some of the games. Some of the other games are a bit better, because with the N64, the control stick, you mainly used the D-pad, and there was like, the C pad, because the C buttons were not a stick; they were just a secondary D-pad.
Right.
And you have like the control stick, which is like an 8-directional control stick in the middle, and trying to convert that to a modern controller with like the 2 sticks and the soldier buttons was a bit weird. Mm-hmm. So I maybe having a way to adjust the controller options would be nice. Because I know right now it's like they only have the one controller option. And you kind of have to make the most of it. But yeah, the other thing that I would like to see, they could probably still keep updating like the current platforms for both Switch 1 and Switch 2, and then just whatever new platforms that they decide to add to Switch 2, it's like, hey, Switch 2 is just gonna have these platforms with those games updated, but for games that are already on the Switch, the updates will be for both Switch 1 and Switch 2, which I think would be a nice compromise. Especially since they'll probably still have the expansion pass stuff too as well. But it would be interesting to see what new reward system that they're thinking of, because they did already mention that they are later this month they're gonna start winding down on the My Nintendo rewards. Which is just basically gold and platinum points. Whereas platinum points you use to just get, cosmetic stuff. But the gold points is like, kind of like the credit thing, where it's like for each point you get a cent to get like cash back on or discounts on other games. Oh yeah, and the voucher system is not going to Switch 2. It'll still be on Switch 1, but it's not going to Switch 2.
That's interesting. So I didn't hear that part. So that's very interesting. Because I felt like it was successful for it.
It was, but I think they might have something else in mind.
Okay.
This news came from Nintendo of Europe, so I would imagine it would be that way across the board.
Mm-hmm. So I hope they do bring back something, and I guess twofold. I hope that they bring back something like My Nintendo, the Platinum part at least, because that was an interesting way to get people to play multiple games and to get points and to kind of keep coming back every month. Because there were a couple months where don't tell Nintendo, but I might not have played my Nintendo Switch for a month because I might have been playing Xbox or PS5. But I would jump back into it because I say, wait a minute, I didn't get the Platinum rewards for this month. And I know this month is everything for the Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, for example, or
the profile stuff.
Yeah, they had a couple Animal Crossing ones there too. So I was like, oh, I gotta jump back in because if I miss it now, I'm not going to get the icon.
I am hoping it's a rework or a revamp of that, and that's the reason why they're doing it, as opposed to just not replacing it with anything, or if what they replace with it ends up being underwhelming. Because I know we were kind of like missing out on like the Club Nintendo stuff for a while. But even then, it's like, in like the last days of Club Nintendo, it's like the prizes started kind of going downhill anyway. And like the good stuff always ran out so quickly. So I guess it kind of made sense to like go into My Nintendo. But seeing as that the actual online service isn't changing, as opposed to the fact that it changed from 3DS and Wii U to the Switch, we're just going from Switch 1 to Switch 2. Hopefully there isn't much uprooting involved this time around. I hope that whatever new system they eventually end up doing, it'll be streamlined and it will still be something worthwhile, basically.
And Matt, I just thought of something too. Do you think that with the new Switch 2, when we mentioned about systems that they might either hopefully carry over or revamp as well too. Do you think that they might bring the virtual console back to where we can actually buy classic games to keep?
They probably aren't going to bring it back in its entirety. If there's going to be anything that they'll bring back, they might have something where it's like, you'll maybe like by buying games, or maybe by like buying like say credits or something, you can use those credits to have an online to download an offline copy of the game.
See, I would
So
love
you'll
that,
have
yeah.
you will have access to all of them online, but if you want to have it offline, you then use the credits to play them offline. Which, yeah, I feel like that should be a part of it.
Mhm.
But I do think that the current NSO setup is getting to the point where it will be better than Virtual Console. It's just they need to finish adding games. to
Yes.
it. Because we already have NES, SNES, and 64, and then we also have Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, and Sega Genesis. So I feel like if they just add to all of those, it will eventually become better than Virtual Console, and then hopefully they'll give us some way to play these games offline. And then it will be like Virtual Console came back. It's just still NSO.
I guess because the tough part, like, I guess, so I have used to the full advantage of the system because I've only, I mostly only am on that Nintendo Online tier. So, and that tier gives me, I think, access to, I want to say the Game Boy Color, Game Boy,
and then you also get the NES and SNES.
yes.
If you want N64, Sega Genesis, and Game Boy Advance, that's the expansion pass.
Mhm. And I think so with those, I would love to just buy like one game, for example, like compared to have to buy the entire expansion pass to play the one game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and that's where I would like to see like a credit system for that, where and hopefully maybe like the reward with the possible revamp to the reward system would hopefully provide that. It's like, hey, you spend this much on games, you can either use what you got to get a discount towards other games at the shop like before, or you can convert that to like some sort of credit to where you can get an offline copy of games that are available at our NSO library, even if you do not have the expansion pass sort of deal. That would be nice, but I'm not sure if that's the route they're going to take.
mhm.
But again, it's like that's just something that we're going to have to find out when they eventually are ready to announce something.
Because if you think about that, that solution would actually, in my opinion, I don't have any data for it. I feel like that would stop a lot of people who are pirating games, because that way, not only is everything available for you, but it's easy to, like, because you're already buying,
Yeah.
you're buying the other games anyway. So if you can convert that to an actual like digital game that might not be available.
Well, the thing is too is that the games also have to actually be available, because even if say the platform itself is available, the library might not be keeping up to what you were hoping to play. Because because a lot of third parties they have to kind of rely on their own collections, due to like to avoid any potential licensing snags.
True.
And even first party stuff, it's just they're only going to be made available when Nintendo feels like, hey, it's time, we haven't had this game available in a while, let's just add it to our library. And that's the way it was also with the Virtual Console too. It's just like there were just certain games that were never made available because Nintendo didn't see the point, even though everyone's been asking to make them available. So, but yeah, that is a tale of all time. It's like, of course it'd be easy to stop pirating if they just made everything available, but whether it's a time thing, whether it's a resource thing, money thing, you know, they just don't with certain games. And it sucks, but that's the way it is sometimes.
Uh-huh.
And
To me,
hopefully with Switch 2 they'll be better about it.
to me, it's always like Nintendo trying to give you some money. Just let me give you the money.
Yeah.
If I want to rebuy this to be able to play it offline, let me.
Well, the
Right.
thing is too is that with Nintendo being in Japan, Japan has a huge resale market.
Oh, okay.
So, especially with like old electronics, so in their home base, so to speak, there's less of an incentive, even though they really should know better at this point, given how much of an international audience they have.
Mhm.
But it's just unfortunately, they don't get the hint sometimes.
Mhm.
And even when they do, it's not necessarily in the way that we want it.
And Matt, I forgot. Did we talk? Did we talk online or offline about the pricing?
We did talk online about the pricing, I believe. Oh no, we talked offline. Okay, so yeah, just hopefully to get this in before we closed for the evening. As far as pricing, we do believe that it will be more expensive than the OLED. We just haven't really decided on how much. We were thinking it would be somewhere between 400 and 450. Is that right?
Yep.
Because I know, like, with current competition, especially for like the latest iterations, PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X can get really up there. But even the Steam Deck and the latest Steam Deck and the latest ROG Ally could still be like 600, 650. So yeah, I guess if they really want to be competitive in prices, it's like, it'd be best if they don't go much higher than 400. But they have to be realistic given the technical upgrades too.
Right. Oh, I was gonna mention too with that. It's like also in terms of like the memory too.
There's no reason why it should only be a 64 gigabyte console at launch. It has to be at least 256 gigabyte, especially because we don't know if you could still connect an SD card to it, or if like the top or the USB area at the top is for an external hard drive, and how that would impact play between being docked and undocked. So, yeah, it's it needs to be at least 256 gigabytes, preferably 512 or more.
I wonder if they'll have. Sorry. I wonder if they'll have two SKUs. One with less memory for maybe the four around 400 maybe, and then for 450 the one with the expanded memory.
That would be ideal, because I know they did that for the Wii U, where they had the 8 gigabyte one and the 32 gigabyte one.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, maybe have like the 256 be the lower one, and the 512 be the higher one. Especially because if they are still planning on doing physical games for both Switch 1 and Switch 2, it's like there's no need to have like a physical or a digital version. Just have a version where it's like, here's the more affordable one with less memory, but here's the more affordable one with more memory. And I know that Steam Deck has 3 tiers, so I think having 3 tiers would also make sense for Nintendo too. Like maybe even have like a 64 128 one for like people that either are like, maybe they skipped the Switch and haven't quite decided yet, or for like, families that, really need a budget option, and then have like the 2 higher ones for the people that specifically game.
I guess I know with the Steam Deck, so my sister bought the smaller Steam Deck, I think the 64 gigabytes.
Yeah.
That one was about 300. I think 300 at the time. But the other models really jumped up to like 4 and 5.
5, yeah. So I would say Nintendo could go that route, just have a smaller jump in between prices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be my big hope, is that because if it's competitive with the pricing of the Steam Deck, I think that would be great. Or like if it's like you mentioned, if it comes in like lower than that $500 price point,
Yeah.
um, but having the platform like kind of already locked to Nintendo, I think
Hmm.
that would be great because then like you don't have to worry about like will things be compatible? Because I know with the Steam Deck's one downside is like you might have your Steam library, but like
Not
and
all games are compatible with it.
exactly, uh-huh.
And I mean that's sort of true of Nintendo too, but it's just I think we've already discussed that it's only going to be like the very gimmicky stuff that from the Switch that aren't going to be compatible with it. Pretty much most games that work on Switch 1 will be on Switch 2, and hopefully there would even be a cross-gen upgrade, especially for the later games, because I noticed that was a thing more with the later games for PS4 going to PS5 as opposed to the earlier games. But yeah, is there anything else that you want to mention about the Switch 2 before we wrap up for tonight, Phil?
I think only let's see. So we went over launch price, we went over memory, we went over um graphics, we went over because we went over the type of games they're going to be there. I think we covered everything other than no, because we covered the mouse also. I think we
The thing that might be a mouse, yeah,
true.
the functionality that might be like a mouse, based on what they kind of hinted at in the teaser.
Because as long as I guess like oh, so this is very minor, but I do wonder your opinion on it. What do you think about the color scheme? Because with it being all black with just the highlights of it, I heard it's kind of a weird design because it's not changed a lot from the original.
Well, I mean, it'll fit along with most of my stuff. I mean, the OLED Switch I had, I got the initial white one, which kind of sticks out for a sore thumb. So I actually don't mind because it does make for like a nice highlight and stuff. And I'm pretty sure down the road they'll come up with models that'll have more of a unique color scheme and the like. So it's just the base model. The base model Switch when it first came out was just gray.
Oh,
So it already has more going for it than that. So yeah, it's just the first model, guys. I'm sure there'll be plenty with different colors coming soon, and even not, there'll be plenty of people that'll make stuff specifically for the Switch so you can customize it yourself, like colorful covers and stuff. So yeah, that's sort of a non-issue for me.
And then the very last question, because I just thought of it too, would be, do you think that, and I don't know if you saw anything yet on it, but for the dock for the new system, are there any changes to the dock, as in maybe more USB connections, maybe
They didn't really show it. I feel like that's going to be left up to the Direct.
Okay.
It really only looks like more rounded, and that the Switch kind of sticks out a little bit more, but that's it from first glances. Because they definitely showed more on the actual unit itself as opposed to the dock.
Because I'm very curious if it's going to have the ability for, direct internet connection. Because
I would hope that would be a given, because that was a thing with the Switch OLED where they did have an Ethernet port.
It did. Okay, cool. Because so hopefully that carries over for it. Because I didn't know that part. Like, cause I hadn't had the OLED one, so I didn't know they updated that model.
Yeah, there's no reason to go a step back there, and I hope Nintendo doesn't, because they would do that. They would just they would leave it out so that you would have to get accessory for the Switch 2 and then come up with an updated model just so that they have you upgrade to the updated model later down the road. It's like, no. It's like, okay, that made sense for the Switch 1 to the OLED, but guys, this should be standard now.
And with that in mind too, do you think that they'll carry over support for accessories that the Switch can use, but might not be, how can I explain? Like, might not be super
I think
standard.
I think the only thing that might carry over is like, maybe the dock for the Switch 1 controllers. Possibly like stuff like the GameCube adapter will carry over as well,
that's
because those
exactly
can
what I had in mind.
those connect via USB.
Mhm.
As long as they can get the connections working with the USB, there's no reason that it should not work with the Switch 2. I feel like that would work with the Switch 2. I think
Excellent.
Labo is the biggest one that won't work because that relies on the specific dimensions of the Switch 1,
Mhm.
and the Switch 2 is already bigger.
Right.
So if they, for whatever reason, want to continue Labo, they would have to make a specific Switch 2 Labo. And I think to a lesser extent Ring Fit Adventure, but I feel like Ring Fit Adventure will most likely carry over to Switch 2. Maybe just make a Ring Fit Adventure 2 with the Ring being compatible with the Switch 2 controllers.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, I I feel like overall, stuff in the Switch 1 should work with the Switch 2 as long as they're not focusing on specific hardware on the Switch 1. Whether it be its size or whether it be like with the Joy-Cons or with the older Joy-Cons.
I hope the really quick. When you like speaking of the Joy-Cons, I hope the new ones have all the hidden functions that we might have taken for granted, but still work in some
They
games.
may not have that IR camera on the right one.
Right.
But I think like the SL SR buttons on the single ones, they're still there, and basically like all of the other buttons are still there too, like the screenshot.
I wonder if the haptic. I don't know if it's called haptic feedback for that, but I don't know if you remember from the if you tilt it, you can like feel the.
It's HD Rumble, but
Yes, HD. Yes.
I think that'll carry over because that's what's kind of the haptic feedback that modern controllers will have too. So I feel like that'll still be a part of it. Yeah.
Perfect. Because I would say that might impact the compatibility of some older games because some of them needed you to feel that HD Rumble to be able to.
No, I think they'll keep that.
Yeah, I love that was a feature I love that I feel like I didn't I took for granted.
I felt like that fell off pretty quick, especially if you're using a pro controller.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I only noticed that I think the most in Mario Odyssey maybe.
Yeah.
I feel like am I thinking the right game?
Mm-hmm.
I think I remember in that one there too, like having to in one of the sand levels.
Possibly.
Yeah, that's all I could think of there, because that would be the main things. Like as long as they keep some of that functionality from the Joy-Cons into the next update, then yeah, it should be pretty good to go there. I hope they have enough in stock.
I would imagine so this time around because since it is compatible with Switch 1, people may not necessarily be rushing to get it. Like people were especially excited for Switch 1 because given how the Wii U was and people were ready to move on for the Wii U. And then because it then worked out for the people that initially got it, just got people excited. Other people excited, especially with the pandemic and stuff. This time around, since Switch 1 already has an install base, I don't think people feel a need to rush to Switch 2 unless if there was a game where it's like I need to have the Switch 2 for it. So I would imagine like maybe with the first few, because I know this was the case with the PS5. I think for the first few months, maybe even the first year or so, it'll be hard to get one. But then by year 2 or 3, it should be a whole lot easier. Because there will be plenty of people that will be willing to wait. I mean, I know I'm willing to wait. At least for now, until I see something.
That's what I'm worried about. I'm worried about they're going to show something. It's like, okay, now I need to get that. Yeah.
My wallet's not going to like me.
Like
it already doesn't like me.
They're going to announce like the update to Super Smash Bros. Is going to add like 2 new characters. Like, okay, now I'm interested.
Yeah, I really hope it's more than 2.
No, I'm just saying all it needs to announce is 2. And I'm like, okay, now I think I'll jump back in.
All right. Well, I mean, that's all I got to say about for the Switch 2 for the time being. You?
That's all I have until hopefully until after the direct, where like if they
Yeah. Well, we'll actually see more. I mean, it depends on when the direct is. I'm not sure if I'll do a live reaction or not, because obviously, if it's timed in a way that I can't immediately make it, of course, I can't really do a live reaction when you see all like the spoilers and stuff, because it's like, it only takes like, because there's so many people that live react to these things nowadays. But
I always wonder, how do they know? Like, because sometimes it kind of just pops up and it's like, wait, I didn't even know that was planned for today, and it just will show up. And
yeah,
live
exactly.
react.
Yeah, I know. Great
like
discussion, y'all. Have a good night. Thank you, Isabel.
Oh, hi.
So yeah, but yeah, I mean, I would like to do a live reaction if I can, but if not, Phil and I will hopefully be back not too long after to do a post-direct discussion to it. We'll be playing the post-direct discussion regardless, so that will be that. But that's at least a month from now, probably a month and a half. Who knows? Scheduling sucks. It's like I'm still on Pokemon Violet. It's like it's just So yeah. With all that said, thanks for joining with me today, Phil. It's good to actually have someone to talk to instead of just to myself for a camera this time. Yeah. So yeah. Hopefully, when everything gets announced for the Switch 2 through the Direct next month, we'll have definitely more to talk about then. But for now, hope you all have a good night. Thanks for watching. Thanks for joining with me, Phil, and hopefully we will see you again real soon.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you, everybody.
Bye.